Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers for a special edition of the Pewter Report podcast. We are coming at you on a Sunday afternoon, literally 1 minute into the afternoon, with one of what's becoming one of my favorite shows, because I actually get to be a part of it on a Sunday. It's our live Bucs mock draft show. I am Josh Queipo, and I am joined with one of my favorite people in the whole world. And I am on the wrong presentation. Let's try this again. Still got it wrong. There we go. I am with JP Acosta of CBS Sports, and that is an update from the last time you came on one of our shows, which was this time last year. Congratulations, JP, moving on up in the world. Glad to see so many people seeing your fantastic work and you getting the recognition that you deserve. You are now part of CBS Sports. What's that been like?
It's honestly been sort of a whirlwind. It's been really cool just being able to, as someone who was predominantly like writing and then sometimes would do podcasts and TV and like radio. Now it's podcasts and TV primary and writing occasionally. So now it's like it's the same, but it's different. But it's been so rewarding. It's been so fulfilling. And plus it gives me more time to hop on with good people like you.
I appreciate that. That is awesome. For those who are a little bit unfamiliar with JP's work, he's a brilliant football mind. But the thing that I appreciate about him so much is the amount of personality that he interjects into his analysis and your ability to relate football players, football analysis to things that are inherently not football related. And I told you this off air just a couple minutes ago. I had one for you. So one of the things that JP does really, really well is he will take a football comp and comp it to something completely outside of the football world. One of those being another passion of yours, which I know is anime.
Yes.
All right. So I came up with one that I thought was really, really natural. I hope you agree with me, but I wanted to throw it at you. Last year, the Atlanta Falcons had Raheem Morris as their head coach. Raheem with a defensive background coming from very much a multiple front. We're going to send players from weird angles and lots of sims and blitzes. And he hired a defensive coordinator who was very much not of that world in Jeff Ulbrich, right? Mm-hmm. Ulbrich came from the solid tree, which was much more 4 down, wide 9. We're just going to get after the passer and trust our second level to defend the run. Go Tanks.
Yeah, I like it. I felt like it was going towards a fusion when you started to talk about it. It's so fun. I love that comparison because with Ulbrich and Raheem Morris sort of mixing their defenses, it got a little chaotic for opposing offenses because you couldn't tell who was blitzing, who was dropping, and Gotenks innately is a chaotic character. He's not going to operate by normal fighting rules because it's a child. Like he turns people into like he's not a normal fusion. So I love that comparison.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And as we go through today's show, anytime we get to a player or a way that you think that a player can affect the Buccaneers scheme or roster, please throw those comps in there because it, like I said, it is one of my favorite things that you do. And it is so uniquely you. Nobody else is doing these things. And I think that's awesome. So with that said, JP, you are our first guest on one of these live mock draft shows who gets to know what the Bucs' first phase of the offseason looks like. We've done a couple of these shows so far, and we've allowed our guests to kind of go with their dream free agency scenario, given some of the legitimate restraints that the Bucs organization has, ownership, willingness to spend, things like that. But you're the first guest who gets to see what Jason Light and the Bucs front office has actually done. So I wanted to start off by just going through some of their free agency offseason moves, see what you as an analyst think of those moves. Where could they have maybe gone in a different direction, or where would you have gone in a different direction? And how do you think that informs their draft strategy as we head towards late April, which you and I were just talking off camera about, that this feels like it's an offseason that is barreling forward 3 days at a time. So with that said, the Bucs' first move in the offseason was to actually retain one of their own, Many Bucs fans wish it were a different one of their own that they retained. It was not Mike Evans, who opted to go to San Francisco, but it was Cade Otton. And so, JP, what do you think about Otton returning to the Bucs? Were you a fan of that move? $10 million a year when some of the guys who were career backups have been getting $8 million. Do you think it was a good move? What were your overall thoughts on Cade Otton?
So I'm a little curious with the Cade Otton deal. I sort of think it implies that they probably won't be in Kenyon Sadiq range, or they could just, if Sadiq is there, like they could still potentially take like the best offensive player there. But Cade Otton, I think, is a solid player. I think that's just the best way to describe him. I think he gives a lot of effort. He's a good run blocker. I think he provides some pass catching upside, but I think this deal specifically, this one in a vacuum, was sort of curious to me because it feels like with some of the stuff that the Bucs offense lacked last season, and of course, some of it was injury to the offensive line, quarterback, receiver, it felt like they needed another punch, needed some more oomph. And losing Mike Evans and retaining Cade Otton feels like you're going the opposite. Like you're not getting that same punch. You're not getting that same explosiveness. So I'm wondering what the Bucs are going to do moving forward that's going to help, like, a sort of, and I talked about it on Twitter. I think with losing Mike Evans, I'm really curious how the Bucs receiver room shakes out, because I do think Emeka Egbuka needs a great offseason to become that number one guy on the outside, because you could tell that I just don't think he was super ready for that at the NFL level. So I'm curious, do they still think he can be ready for that with another offseason? Do they think like Jalen McMillan can be that guy? Do you still have a lot of hope in Chris Godwin? Godwin obviously coming off that catastrophic injury, wasn't nearly the same effectiveness as a player. And Tez Johnson is sort of like, he's a fun piece to have in the offense, but you need a boundary guy. And I'm wondering, like, with losing Mike Evans and keeping Cade Otton, I'm sorry I'm grouping all of it together, but I think those are the two moves where I'm sort of like, I'm really curious what's going to happen with this Bucs offense that's now under new management.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really great place to kind of leave that, because if there's anybody in the NFL who can create an offense, explosive passing offense without a traditional X receiver, it's Sean McVay. The Bucs have Zach Robinson, who came from the Sean McVay tree. He was the offensive coordinator when McVay was doing that before he had Devontae Adams, back when it was Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. So if you look at Nacua and Kupp and you say there are some similarities in how those two gel together between with Egbuka and Godwin, maybe there's a world where they don't necessarily need that dominant X receiver, but we haven't seen Robinson do that on his own, correct?
Yeah, we haven't seen Robinson do that, especially because in Atlanta, you had that dominant, or not dominant, but you had that boundary receiver in Drake London. And when things got bad for the Falcons, they spammed Drake London inbreakers. Like if obviously you watched a lot of the Falcons games, they had three players they would funnel targets to: Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. That was the type of offense that they had. So I wonder, with Robinson coming over, do you need that boundary guy that's sort of in the same vein as a guy like Drake London, or can Egbuka become that? And I'm not saying that Egbuka can never become that. Like, obviously, like, development is not linear, and we don't know what the guy's going to look like going into year two, but it was clear when Mike Evans was gone, I don't think Egbuka was ready for that. And I also think Baker Mayfield needs a guy on the boundary he can just throw the ball up to. I think he needs a guy that's sort of like, you know, the meme, like, screw it, whatever receiver's down there.
Is back there. Yeah.
Yeah. He needs his screw it, somebody's down there somewhere. Like, Jalen McMillan obviously could also become that, but I think Jalen McMillan is also a very complimentary receiver. He's not a guy you want to build that offense around. So is this going to be a situation where instead of what Robinson did in Atlanta was like with force feeding three guys, maybe this is an everybody eats sort of offense where instead of force feeding one guy 15 targets a game. You spread out those targets evenly.
Yep. Now, the Bucs, that was their big addition on offense. It wasn't their only addition. Well, it wasn't even an addition. Otten was already there, but it wasn't their only addition on offense. The Bucs also brought in, because they knew they were going to lose Rachaad White. So they went ahead and brought in Kenny, as he prefers to be called, Kenny Gainwell, who had a really fantastic season with the Steelers last year. What were your thoughts on Kenny Gainwell as an addition to go with Bucky Irving?
Initially, I was like, $7 million a year is pretty pricey for a running back too. That's sort of like a compliment to Bucky Irving. But I think Kenny Gainwell, what he showed in Pittsburgh was that you can give him a lot of targets as a running back or as split out at receiver, and he can make something shake as a check down guy. Obviously, in Pittsburgh, that is all they did is spam check downs to Kenny Gainwell. But I think he showed a lot of promise as a guy who can pick up yards after the catch. That's something that I do think is going to need to improve with the Bucs offense, especially because with Bucky Irving, and why I think it's so interesting is you now have a guy that you're paying $7 million a year. He's going to bite into some of those touches that Bucky Irving is going to get. It's going to be a split between Irving and Gainwell. And I think that's going to help keep Bucky Irving fresh. That's the hope. You're not subjecting him to so many hits. And he also was injured last season. That was a large part of why that offense didn't look as effective in years before. But now I'm sort of curious if Kenny Gainwell can also provide that pop in the receiving game or in the check down game, because the Bucs have been really good at running screens, and Gainwell obviously is a very good receiver, and you want to get the ball in his hands. So I wonder what the split will be between carries or total touches between Irving and Gainwell, because this contract sort of says, like, forget like RB2. This is like a 1B situation.
Yeah, and with Bucky being a little bit on the smaller side, he dealt with some injuries last year. I think a 1A, 1B is where he's going to be able to shine the most. Now, you mentioned Gainwell biting into Bucky's touches and his snaps. And if you want to bite into something that's really great, we recommend you go to Walk On Sports Bistreaux, where they have happy hour on Monday from 3 to close, Friday from 3 to 6, Wednesday and Thursday from 3 to 6 and 9 to close. And of course, the best day, Tuesday, all day. You can get $3.99 domestic pints, $5 premium house pours or happy hour wines. They do have their 22-ounce domestic drafts for just $5.49. We were talking about biting into things. How about $4 hush puppies or onion rings, $7 boom boom shrimp, half waffle cheese fries, where you can share, just like Bucky and Kenny are going to share snaps, or spinach and artichoke dip. You have your $8 boneless wings, which you can basically just make a meal, or the cheeseburger sliders. Walk-ons is where it's at. So, JP, we talked a little bit about the offense, but most Bucs fans were concerned about Todd Bowles' defense last year and how that would be addressed here in the 2026 offseason. They made a few moves there, 3 specifically to address 3 specific position groups, and I was the victim of my own syntax there. We'll start with Alex Anzalone as a linebacker. Last year, the Bucs linebacking core was insert adjective here. I'm interested to hear what your adjective might be. Levante David still has not made a decision, but he may be back. He may not be back. The Bucs weren't going to wait on him. They decided to grab Anzalone in the first day of free agency, 2 years, $17 million. What are your thoughts on Anzalone and how he fits in this Todd Bowles defense?
I actually really like this deal, and I like the fit of Anzalone in this defense, because what Alex Anzalone was for the Lions was he was their tight end defender, and he was their running back defender when they played man coverage. And the Lions played man coverage at one of the highest rates in the NFL over the last few years. Anzalone was their guy to defend tight ends because Jack Campbell was like their spy or their blitzer. Anzalone was their coverage guy, and I think he fared pretty well, especially when the pass rush was actually starting to fire up a little bit. And I think for what the Bucs linebacking core was, and if I'm going to use any adjective to describe it, I'm just going to use yikes, because that's what it was. It was very yikes last year, especially in coverage. I believe they were one of the worst teams in the NFL when it came to coverage from their linebacker group.
Yep. Yeah, so, it was basically them and the Bengals, right? They were competing for the worst.
The Bengals, like competing for that bottom rung. But Anzalone gives them an option against when they play man coverage. When you carry guys vertically, he has the athleticism, he has the range to do that. So I think that's just another piece to where I don't know if he's like necessarily going to be like full-time starter. He can be, but it's depending on what Levante David does. Like, I think you get a really nice coverage guy, and it immediately fills a need for Tampa, especially in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, there are lots of things about his game that I really like, and I think you pointed out some of my favorites. What I think is interesting about Anzalone is when you think of a Todd Bowles defense, there's two things that he asks his linebackers to do a lot that I don't know if it's right in Anzalone's wheelhouse, which is number one, mug up in those A-gaps, and you might come, you might drop, right? And I think he can drop from a mugged up look. I just don't think he scares offensive linemen as a guy who's going to come forward, right? And so if they're not scared of him coming forward, if they just think it's going to be the drop, how effective is he as that threat? The other thing is that Bowles will often ask, and Levante's done this really well, even as a smaller linebacker, he likes to change the defensive front late in pre-snap, right? And he'll bring that weak side linebacker, which is where I think Anzalone profiles best, bring him down, make him the fifth man on the line. Again, not exactly in his wheelhouse. So there's things about this fit that I personally love, but there are also where I'm like, does that foretell maybe a small change in Bowles' defense? How is Anzalone going to be able to do some of these specific things that he wasn't asked to do a lot in Detroit? Your thoughts on those specific areas?
I think Anzalone, you're correct. And he's not exactly a scary blitzer. Like, you're not going to say, like, we got to circle Alex Anzalone. And when he was in Detroit, you weren't circling Alex Anzalone as a blitzer. You were circling Jack Campbell. He was the coverage guy, and he would line up over tight ends. So I wonder in this defense, and if there is a change coming to Todd Bowles' defense, I think Anzalone is going to be the guy where if he walks up to the line of scrimmage, like you said, maybe he's just a dropper. Maybe you're just showing that front to try and get them to, teams will can plays if they get a certain front. You walk them down late, you try and get them the can. And you try and get them into a pass play, and you just end up dropping. You look like a four-man front anyway. But I do also think the Anzalone deal doesn't stop them from going out and adding a linebacker in the draft, and which is why I'm so curious what the Bucs are going to do defensively in the draft, because none of their deals or none of the moves that they've made have taken away any certain position in this draft class, especially in the first couple of days, which is what makes them super intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get to the draft in just a little bit. We've got a couple more free agency moves I want to get your thoughts on, but eventually, JP, you're going to be the guy on the phone. You're going to be Jason Light. You get to make the final decision on all of these picks, and I'm going to be the fresh shaven, at least up top guy next to you, who's going to be maybe whispering in your ear, hey, I could use some help over here on this defense, right? So, but before we get to that, the Bucs weren't done after signing Anzalone on day one. They came back on day two, and they decided to shore up their front four, but not in the way that most Bucs fans were thinking. Everybody was hoping for a big splash on the edge, and I think it's been reported by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, among others, that the Bucs were in on Trey Hendrickson. Baltimore came in at the 11th hour. They lost their deal for Max Crosby, and they gave Hendrickson a king's ransom, right? With $28 million a year over 4 years. I want to say at least half of that is guaranteed over the first two. And they got a deal together for Hendrickson very quickly. And that left the Bucs, among other teams, looking for how can we improve our front four in different ways. And they decided to go with the interior, with A'Shawn Robinson, signing him to a 1 year, $10 million deal. What were your thoughts on Robinson? How do you think he can help the Bucs? Do you think he can help the Bucs defense? What are your thoughts on him?
I think A'Shawn Robinson at this point is a bear of a defender in the run game. I think that's what he's going to do best. He is powerful. He is big. One of my favorite things to say about A'Shawn Robinson is he has been bald since high school. That is a run defender. That is the most run defending defensive lineman in this draft, or not in the draft, in the class. Like, he is going to defend the run, and that is the one thing he's going to do. I don't think he offers much pop as a pass rusher, but I don't think you're asking him to. I think you're asking him to stop the run. And I think it's really curious. It's really fascinating to me, the juxtaposition of, you lose Logan Hall in free agency, which was sort of expected, and you bring in A'Shawn Robinson. You're hoping Robinson plays next to Vita Vea. He can take some Vita Vea snaps or at nose if you wanted to. But I think, like you said with Anzalone and sort of what Todd Bowles wants to do, you can be versatile. If you want to move Vea, if you want to move A'Shawn Robinson around, like A'Shawn Robinson was going between the nose and like the 5-tech and like playing heavy 5 in Carolina. So I think it provides some defensive flexibility up front, but primarily this is about stopping the run.
Yeah, and I love him at the 5 on base downs for Todd Bowles' defense, right? With that 3-4, because if he slots in at the 5 and you have Kalijah Cansey come back healthy, Cansey now can work opposite of him as the 3 technique, and that allows him to do what he does best, which is just slip gaps and wreak havoc in the backfield. So Robinson's really good at kind of setting that heavy edge. So I really like what you had to say there. I think that it's a sneaky move, maybe a little bit of an overpay, but it's a 1-year deal. So how much are you really overpaying for 1 year? The Bucs were not done on the defensive front. They had one more addition to make, this time at edge rusher, and that was with kind of a late breakout guy. He had 11 sacks last year for the Lions at 30 years old, and that is Al-Qadim Muhammad, who has been around since like 2017, and then just really kind of came onto the scene last year. More of a designated pass rusher, would you say, JP?
Yeah, I think he's a designated pass rusher. I honestly love this deal for the Bucs because Al-Qadim Muhammad is one of like my favorite role players in the NFL. He is the perfect Robin to a Batman pass rusher because he has the length, he has the fluidity to win around the corner and around the edge. And I think that's something that the Bucs were really missing next to or opposite of Yaya Diaby as sort of like a third pass rusher. He is not going to be like a full-time starter, but I do think he has a nice complementary pass rush style to Diaby, where Diaby's going to win more with power. He's going to win trying to go through offensive tackles. Al-Qadim Muhammad's going to try and go around. And when you think about Qadim Muhammad's 11 sacks this past season for the Lions, he's working opposite Aiden Hutchinson. So he's always going to be good as the secondary piece or the tertiary piece of a pass rush puzzle. And when you think about hopefully what the Bucs are when they are healthy, with Kalijah Cansey, with Yaya Diaby, if you add one more piece via the draft, it's easy to forget about Al-Qadim Muhammad, and that's what happened on the Lions defense. You forgot about Al-Qadim Muhammad, and that's how he ends up with multiple sack games against like the Cowboys.
Yeah, and one piece of information I found to be hilarious is the Bucs spent $4 million on Al-Qadim Muhammad, has the potential to get up to $6 million. They spent $10 million on A'Shawn Robinson, and combined, they spent less than half than what the Carolina Panthers spent on Jalen Phillips. For those of you not paying attention, both of the players the Bucs signed have more sacks in the last 2 years than Jalen Phillips. Just saying. Just saying. So, all right. So JP, we analyzed each individual piece, but now as you look at this roster as it compares to last year, no Mike Evans, brought back Cade Otton, no Rashad White, brought in Kenny Gainwell, lost Greg Gaines and Logan Hall, brought in A'Shawn Robinson, lost Hassan Reddick, brought in Al-Qadim Muhammad. Potentially losing Levante David, we don't know, but we absolutely know that they've added Alex Anzalone. Do you think this roster, as it stands right now, has helped, is treading water from where it was last year? Do you think they've made some improvements, or do you think they've taken a step back?
I think they're sort of treading water. I think losing Mike Evans is the biggest one. And obviously we talked about what losing Mike Evans meant for the offense and how everybody has to step up. But that's where Jason Light gets paid. This is why you make the big bucks. You go out and get these guys and you develop them. And this is where coaching makes the big bucks. You have to help these guys go from promising rookies to quality starters or stars. And that's what you're hoping with Ibuka. You drafted a receiver in the first round last year. He should slide in right where Mike Evans left, and you're more than ready to have him be your number one guy. I think defensively, you lose Jamel Dean, but they had already been preparing to lose Jamel Dean by drafting Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish last year, opposite Zion McCollum. I think they are set there. But I think this team is still sort of treading water to me because they still haven't added like that punch yet. The explosives, I think on the offense, I think it's also sort of reliant on how healthy this team really is going to be, because last season they were ravaged by injury, and it's going to be sort of reliant on what this offense is going to look like under Zach Robinson. And so I feel like all these deals feel like we're going to try and cobble it together 1 year. This division isn't exactly the best. A team just won it at 8-9. I think they're going to try and see what they can do in this 1 year, because it feels like Todd Bowles is also coaching for this 1 year. Like, he's got one more shot to try and figure it out. And if he doesn't, I feel like that's why they were so in on Trey Hendrickson. Like, you need to make the one big move to try and keep your job, or to at least like get this team to a level where you can win enough to keep your job in this upcoming season. So I'm curious what they do in the draft to get more punch to help like sort of keep Todd Bowles' job safe.
Yep. Well, and that's where we're headed. So I just saw a comment from Art of War. Just connected. Has the mocking begun? No, you're just in time. That's exactly where we're headed. We just talked about free agency and where the Bucs are headed into the draft. So let's see if I can make a smooth segue to presenting this. And the answer is no, I can't. Let's see. I think I know what I did wrong. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. All righty. So I am not a producer by nature, for those of you wondering, but we're making our way. So, all right, JP, we've got to make sure that we've got our settings correct. So I've got us on a 7-round mock. The speed is currently at turbo. Do you want to slow that down and see how the first few picks work out? Would you be interested in trading up as Jason Light, or do you think we can just go right to pick 15?
I think we're going to go right to pick 15.
All righty. Any other adjustments you want me to make in the simulator?
Nope. I'm excited. We set the table for what the Bucs could potentially be doing in the draft, so I'm excited.
All right. As a quick strategy, what position groups are you thinking about most for these first 2 to 3 rounds?
I'm thinking edge and linebacker for the first 2 rounds, just to get younger, to get faster. And I think that's where I'm headed for the first 2 rounds. After that, I want to try and add some size and some speed into that offense.
All right. Well, I know you have Bucs fans' hearts at this point, because you said edge and linebacker. And when you said size, that is something that Todd Bowles has publicly said he's hoping to add this offseason. Obviously, the Robinson pickup does that. So let's see if we can do it in the draft. So we're going to go ahead and enter the draft here, and we're going to hit start. And we'll take a look and see who has come off the board so far. Fernando Mendoza, no surprise there. Arvell Reese, there's a edge or linebacker, depending on how you see him. Sonny Styles off the board, so my heart is broken. Let's see, some edge rushers. David Bailey and Ruben Bain both have gone. And then the rest is, we've got a couple of safeties in Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman, and Mansour Delane at cornerback, a couple of tackles. How do you feel like this has fallen for you if you're Jason Light right now, JP?
Honestly, you feel great. You could go best player available, which obviously I think might be Kenyon Sadiq if you really want to turbocharge that offense. But there are some really fascinating edge prospects here. And I think the Bucs are going to go edge in the first round. And walk with me here for a little bit, because there are 3 guys that I'm considering. And I was going to let you in through the process. One of them is Akeem Mesidor from the University of Miami. The other is Keldrick Falk from Auburn, and then Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. And these guys bring a bunch of different flavors to the pass rush profile. I think Keldrick Falk is exactly what Todd Bowles wants when he talked about size on the defensive line. When you think about Logan Hall and the size, the length, and the versatility, Keldrick Falk might be more of a defensive tackle in the NFL than an edge. He's 6'6", 285. He's still a fairly young player. He's got long arms. He's a very smooth and solid run defender, but the pass rush has not caught up yet. And so you're wondering, do you take the time and do you draft a guy who gives you a high floor as a run defender, but doesn't really have that upside as a pass rusher yet? With Mesidor, I think I'm a little lower on Mesidor than most other people. I do think he's a little stiff. I think he's really stiff, especially getting around the corner. I think he's a very good counter rusher because he's a very technical rusher. But Cassius Howell is a very fascinating prospect to me because he's not built like your traditional edge rusher. Of course, he is one of the 2 edge rushers in this class with really short arms. Everybody talks about Ruben Baines' short arms. Cassius Howell's arms are shorter than Ruben Baines'. He also has a smaller torso. So I say like he moves a little herky-jerky, but that's because he's getting so many steps in on the field. Like, I guess the way to describe it is when you run, when you see like longer athletes, especially on the defensive line, they're getting like their strides are so long that they're able to close distances in a short period of time. Cassius Howell doesn't have super long legs. He's getting his feet in the ground. He's like a little he's like a little car. Like he's like a little compact car, but he's in a way like he has the best finish in this draft class. He can flatten and bend at the top of his pass rush better than almost anybody else in this draft class. So with that, I think I'm going to go Cassius Howell here.
Cassius Howell. So adding some juice to the pass rush. All righty.
We're going to turbocharge this pass rush. We're going to try and get speed. Like I said, they're going to try and get faster. And that's where I'm sort of thinking like, all right, let's get a little faster. Let's add some punch to that defensive line.
Yeah, so if we think about what the Bucs pass rush at that point, at least at the edges, you have Yaya Diaby, who is locked in as your number 1. And Diaby has been one of the better young edge rushers since he's come out in 2023. He has yet to put it all together. He had his rookie season where he wasn't getting a lot of pressures, but he was finishing some sacks. I think he ended that year with 7.5 sacks. Then year 2, all of a sudden, tons of pressure. One of the top pressure guys in the NFL had trouble finishing. This past year came down a little bit on the pressures, came back up on the sacks a little bit. He was at 7. If he has an opportunity to put those 2 together, you're talking about a double-digit sack guy. And what's been interesting, obviously I've been watching him quite a bit, and every year he's added something to his repertoire. Year 1, he was just basically like a crash test dummy. He's like, I'm just going to bust in and just hit stuff, right? And then year 2, you started seeing towards the end of the year, he was adding a little bit more on the high side. He was bending a little bit more. And then year 3, he's put together a few different pass rush moves. So a lot of different things that he's added. It's interesting to see what he might be able to add for year 4. Now you've got Cassius Howell, who probably slots in as your edge 2. You've signed Al-Qadim Muhammad to be edge 3. David Walker, who tore his ACL in training camp last year or before training camp, he's hopefully coming back. And then way down on the depth chart, you're now pushing Anthony Nelson, who's been kind of a steady Eddie. He's probably best suited as an edge 4, edge 5. They've been using him as edge 3. And then Chris Braswell, who Bucs fans would rather I just don't bring up at all. So there's our first round pick. Tell me a little bit about how the board's lining up for you here in round 2. There is somebody on this board that Bucs fans have already fallen in love with. I will just give it away for you, JP. He's the third person on this list.
Yep. He is everybody's favorite linebacker.
Everybody's favorite. You and I both got to talk to him in Mobile. He's a great interview. Very cerebral guy. Very smart. You can see it in the way he plays. But I'm just scrolling down here a little bit. I can always adjust for the position groups if you want to see those a little bit more specifically. But how do you feel like this is lined up for the Bucs here at pick 46?
This honestly lines up great, and there's some really interesting decisions to be made. I already know where I'm going. If you can filter it to linebacker, this is where we're going.
This is where we're going?
Yes. I don't think I'm going to go Jacob Rodriguez here because I think he's very similar to Alex Anzalone.
Okay.
But he's not a blitzer. And he's more of a coverage guy, a former quarterback. He plays linebacker like a former quarterback. You know how people say, like, there are football players who, like, were wrestling state champs and you play football like a wrestler? Or, like, one of my favorite comparisons in this draft class is Jordan Tyson to his brother Jalen Tyson, who plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers because Jordan plays like a basketball player. Jacob Rodriguez plays linebacker like a quarterback. His spatial recognition, I think his ability to drop in zone coverage, understanding of concepts is like a quarterback. But I just think he's sort of a catch tackler, and I don't think he provides a lot of pop as a blitzer.
Sure.
So I don't think that's going to be the pick here. I'm going between two. One of them is one of my favorite players in this draft class. I've talked about him a lot. One of them is Josiah Trotter from Missouri. That is a whirling ball of chaos at the linebacker spot. One of the better blitzers for his size in this draft class. He can evade blocks really well. I do think there's some hit or miss with him because he's gonna swing. He is like a prime like MLB slugger where like he's either hitting it out of the park or he might strike out. And you're gonna have to live with that sometimes because if he hits a home run, you're creating a negative chaotic play. The other one's Jake Golday from Cincinnati. And we talked about adding size. Jake Golday, like if you really love the Arvell Reese build or Sonny Styles build at linebacker, the next guy is Jake Golday. 6'4", 240, former defensive end at Central Arkansas, which Bucs fans know well. Transferred to Cincinnati, played off-ball linebacker. My issue with Golday is he doesn't play to his size in the tackle box. And I think that's because he's still learning how to play off-ball linebacker. He transferred up and became an off-ball linebacker. He was an edge at Central Arkansas. I think here.
Can I put in one more as Todd Bowles, right? Because I think there's a guy on here most Bucs fans aren't talking about. I've fallen in love with him, and I think he is a Todd Bowles linebacker. I'm going to see if you can guess who it is. He's on this list right now.
Okay. Can I guess Keyshawn Elliott?
That's my guy.
Yep.
That's my guy. You want somebody who can go forward and just – so I feel like Elliott is everything I wanted Trotter to be, right? So, like, you had mentioned Trotter, there's a lot of missing, and my comp for him is a very specific moment from a very specific scene in Top Gun where they're like, where'd he go? And he's like, where'd who go? Like he guesses, right? And when he guesses right, it's awesome. And when he doesn't, he has no clue what's happening around him. Keyshawn Elliott, though, I mean, this is a guy, and he had a bunch of sacks. And the hilarious thing was a lot of his sacks weren't like what you would think. Like he blitzed in and a lot of it was the quarterback just broke contain and he was out in coverage. And he's like, all right, I'll just go there. But when he was rushing, when they used him as a blitzer, he was everything that I thought Todd Bowles would love as a guy you just want going forward and just creating chaos. So I love Elliott, so I had to plug him. But this is your draft. You are Jason Light. I am just simply Todd Bowles on your shoulder saying, what about my guy, Elliott? You still going with Trotter?
Now that you mentioned it, Keyshawn Elliott's a guy that I came around on late because I was watching Keith Abney and I was like, who is number 44? He is just wrecking this entire game.
Right?
Keyshawn Elliott. I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued. I put out a tweet like Keyshawn Elliott. I'm intrigued. You have my attention. I think I am going to go Josiah Trotter, mainly because he's one of my favorite players in this entire draft class. And I think if you are going to watch what Josiah Trotter is, I think the best game is the Oklahoma game. I think he
That was a good
impacts
one.
the game a lot as a run defender. His ability to slip and evade people in the tackle box is really good. But for me, it's what he does as a blitzer. He is not going to stay blocked by a lineman or even a running back. I think if Todd Bowles wants someone who he can mug up, I do think where he lacks in pure size. I think Josiah Trotter he's not the biggest guy. I think he's like maybe 6 feet, 235 pounds. But he is such a chaotic player. He's honestly kind of similar to Nakobe Dean, where he's just a menace whenever you get him on the field. And with him and Alex Anzalone as sort of his coverage counterpart, you can rotate those guys next to Levante David if he comes back. Or if you want to, you can play both of them and they sort of complement each other and fill each other's roles pretty well. So I'm going to go Josiah Trotter here.
All right. I like it. I loved what you said about Galde. He has some of the best traits, but you mentioned what he does in the tackle box is, I mean, Cincinnati just didn't trust him to do it. And I always felt like he's got day 2 traits and he'll get drafted for those traits. But he's more of a day 3 player because you don't want him getting on the field unless it's like a sub package until his 2nd or 3rd year, because you got to teach him how to be a linebacker, basically.
Yeah, so. He's an overhang player. That's where they played him in Cincinnati. When you watch him spill a puller or take on a puller as an overhang, you're like, oh, there's a defensive end, because that's all defensive ends do. They are the overhang. They're the end man on the line. And Jake Golday plays that like he's very familiar, so it looks better. But in the tackle box, it doesn't look that great, so you lack that physicality, even though he's 6'4", 240, and is a great athlete.
Yep.
But he needs time. He needs time on task. He needs reps to actually figure out how to play football. And I don't know if Todd Bowles has
that kind of time,
to go teach a guy how to play football.
Oh, man, I couldn't agree more. So, all right, so now we're moving to the 3rd round. Just a quick recap. The Bucs, with JP Acosta acting as Jason Light, selected Cassius Howell in the 1st round at the 15th pick. Give them that edge rusher they have been seeking since they took Joe Tryon-Shoyinka in the 1st round of the 2021 draft. And then backstop that with Josiah Trotter, who's going to hang out behind him next to Alex Anzalone, kind of completing that linebacking duo and pushing Servassier Dennis to the bench. All right, and so now we're into round 3. We've got the 77th pick overall. JP, I'm going to scroll down. I can always adjust for a specific trade or specific position group. And then we do have 6 teams offering us a trade at this point. So if you feel like there's not great value for pick 77, we can explore a trade too.
So I do want to look into some of the trades and what we're looking at trade wise.
All righty, let's take a look here. So next pick, we could drop back 3 spots with Baltimore at pick 80, then Minnesota at 82, the Cowboys at 92, Seahawks at 96, the Raiders at 102, Spytech and Jason Light getting together on a trade, not the one that Bucs ones really want them to get together on, and then the Lions at 118.
So I think I'm curious in trading back because I feel like the money of this draft is on day 2 and day 3. If you can backstop enough picks to where you can either take your swings on guys on day 3 or late day 2, or punt those picks into 2027 where there's more top end talent, I think that might be the move here. Let's see. The Ravens are offering 80, so we jump back 3 spots.
So for that, you're probably going to pick up maybe like 160. Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. And then you said the Vikings are offering 82.
Yep. So 161.
So before we truly accept any of these trades, go back to the player pool and let's see who's available at guard.
At guard. Okay. Interior offensive line. Here we come.
So we got Sam Hecht, who's more of a center. Jalen Farmer's a very intriguing guard, but I don't think he fits what the offense is going to become. With Zach Robinson, they are such a pure wide zone team. Like that is the
scares the hell out of me, JP.
That is
the Bucs have tried this.
Zone. That is the most outside zone team player, outside zone coach. That is what Zach Robinson's going to do. It is the purest. Watching the Zach Robinson offense for the Falcons is the purest distillation of what the 2018 Rams were.
Yeah.
Just so much outside zone boot action off of that.
Oh my gosh. And then you look at the offensive additions, right? So Kenny Gainwell, he's great at getting to the edge. Outside zone is absolutely something he's built for. And one that we didn't even discuss, but Jake Browning is a wide zone and boot quarterback for the backup spot. And the Bucs have tried this. They've tried it with Dave Canales, and they had one of the worst rushing attacks in the NFL. They tried it with Liam Cohen. Now, it was more mid-zone for both of them, not pure wide zone, outside zone. They tried it with Cohen, and Cohen beat his head against the wall for 5 weeks and then said, you know what? Let's try this gap stuff. And then all of a sudden they became like the best rushing attack this side of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And now we're going back and we're going to do it all over again. And
we're going back into the building.
Buddy.
I do want to look at the tackles too, because there are some tackle converts who I think could fit. And I'm hoping that he's still there.
Does not look like it. Markel Bell is the top tackle that
he is not. But I was thinking of Caleb Tiernan. That was the guy that I was thinking of tackle convert moving the guard. Brian Parker's probably going to move the center. Trey Zune also a center. Jude Bowery is fascinating. I think he is a very good athlete, but I think he needs time on task with reps. Keelan Rutledge is an awesome player. I just don't think he's a very good fit for wide zone, outside zone. So maybe we go a little bit into the luxury here.
Okay.
Let's check out some of the skill positions. Let's check out receiver and tight end. And see what we think.
All right.
Now, I don't think Zachariah Branch is a fit for what we're looking for here. I think they need size because Tez Johnson, Ibuka's like 6 feet 6'1". You need some size on the outside.
So are we looking at Notre Dame?
I want to like Malachi Fields as much as everybody else likes Malachi Fields. Because I've told people a lot. My biggest blind spot with receivers, big, tall, fast. I can make it work if you're big, tall, fast. We will see. Like you can give me so many more opportunities if you're just big, tall, fast. But I think Malachi Fields is a little stiff, and I don't think he has that second gear. And there are a couple of guys that sort of lower down that I'm really fascinated by and wondering whether I should get them now or get them on day 3. And I don't know if they'll make it. The 3 that I'm thinking about are Deshaun Stribling from Ole Miss, who my friend Corey Kennan has put me on to. Very fascinating player, very good player. But a couple of my guys are Bryce Lance and Ted Hurst. Bryce Lance from North Dakota State, Ted Hurst from Georgia State. Bryce Lance is an older prospect, 25, but big, tall, fast. That's what Bryce Lance does. He is such an electric athlete. When you talk about only working the vertical and horizontal plane, Bryce Lance is going to create explosives. Ted Hurst is also very fascinating because he combines that with body control and the ability to high point the ball. He is a big receiver who plays big. And so with that being said, I think if we're going to go luxury here, give me Ted Hurst.
Ted Hurst, come on down.
Give me Ted Hurst. I am a huge Ted Hurst fan. I think he plays with speed. Obviously ran that 4.42 at the combine. But he has size and he plays big. The issue sort of is, going from Georgia State to the NFL. How is that adjustment going to be made? But he is an explosive. He's an explosive receiver. So I think that having that size and speed downfield will open up the in-between areas for Ibuka, for Cade Otton, for Chris Godwin. So you have layers to this offense with McMillan and Ted Hurst being sort of the verticality.
Yep.
you can rotate and have Ibuka work the in between. Godwin be the yak guy. Like now you've created the layering that made the Bucs offense so great before.
I like it. I like it. All right. So we have at this point, first round taking Cassius Howell, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. Then in the second round, Josiah Trotter from the Trotter linebacker tree, linebacker out of Missouri. And I like comparing it to, it's the family tree, but also linebackers, you kind of play like a tree. Ted Hurst is the pick in the third round at 77 out of Georgia State. Close enough to Tampa Bay, and he's fast enough. He could just literally run down 75. And, I think some of our friends would say low moving costs. So that dovetails with the Glazers, but I'll stop there. So now we get to the fourth round here. And before we get to the fourth round, I just want to remind all of our Pewter Report viewers that the best place to go when watching sporting events is absolutely Walk On Sports Bistreaux. They have 3 Tampa area locations: Wesley Chapel, Midtown Tampa, Lakeland. It is hockey season, so you can drop the puck, raise the energy, watch at Walk-Ons. The Lightning are second in the Atlantic Division. They're only 4 points back of first. And the Florida Panthers aren't very good this year. So that should be something that all Tampa Bay Lightning and Tampa Bay people enjoy. Go to Walk On Sports Bistreaux. You can catch the games there. So, JP, fourth round. What are we thinking? 2 defensive picks so far. Took a luxury pick in the third round with Ted Hurst. Where are you thinking we go here? Do you want to go ahead and get Carson Beck?
Hey, Ted Hurst's going to be able to run from Georgia State to Tampa. I think if Carson Beck ran, I think it'd take a few more years.
But you could say that Carson Beck has been playing Battleship with the Bucs, right? Because he was in Athens, Georgia, and then he went down to Miami, so he overshot it a little bit. So now he's coming back. He was honing in. Exactly.
He's midpointing it.
That's how you sink a battleship.
We're going to go to the offensive line here. We're going interior offensive line or trying to find the tackle convert.
Okay.
Into interior. So, again, Brian Parker's here. I just don't think he is a guard. I think he's going from tackle to center. And he's played at the Shrine Bowl. He was a center. Trey Zune also going to play center in the NFL because he was a tackle at Texas A&M, and he actually was pretty good against the Miami guys. I think he was the better Texas A&M offensive tackle against Bain and Mesidor, but he also played center for a game against Missouri and actually fared pretty well there. I think Jude Bowery is a very fascinating prospect because he has the requisite athleticism to play in a wide zone offense, but he also is not ready for like real snaps. But if you're hoping that Bredesen is going to continue to play left guard, which is probably like in a perfect world, that's what you're hoping. Yep. Bowery can be sort of that swing tackle guard that if injuries start to pile up again, you're not having to move Graham Barton from tackle or from center to tackle back to center. Well, and that's sort of where we're looking.
Yeah, and the good news for the Bucs there is late in the season they had a breakout with a rookie tackle, and his name is escaping me at the moment. And he was actually out of Georgia Southern, and I'll figure it out in a minute. But they really feel like they have their swing tackle already on the roster. And they just re-signed Dan Feeney, who logged snaps for them last year. So if you're saying Jude Bowery is more of a developmental pick who could help them in 2027 and be Ben Chukwuma, thank you, yes. Michael Pless. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I don't know why the name just escaped me, but Chukwuma had some pretty impressive starts, especially for a kid who hadn't played a lot of football. Coming into the NFL, he was an undrafted free agent, had a really good start, and then one that was a little bit shakier at the end of the season there against the Dolphins, if I remember correctly. So, So you want to go with Jude Bowery then?
I might hold off mainly because the depth has started. Like, if you're going to have Feeney, you're going to have Chooks. I do think he is going. I think they're fine if they want to play those guys if injuries start to happen. let's check out tight end.
Tight end.
If there's one thing about Zach Robinson that I do know, he's going to want to hammer 12 personnel.
Yeah.
He's going to want to hammer 12.
The depth behind Cade Otton is not the best with Payne Durham. And yeah, I want to say Robinson ran 12 personnel at the second highest rate last year. So this could be an opportunity to upgrade that tight end 2 spot. Devin Culp is also on the roster. Bucs fans really like him just because of the athletic testing, but he hasn't been able to really crack the field.
And that's sort of where I'm thinking with these guys. The tight end class, for those who are still getting introduced to this year's draft class, it is very bottom heavy. Like, this class is very, of course, Kenyon Sadiq at the top. Very good. We have no idea who tight end 2 is. If you ask 10 different draft analysts, draft scouts, they'll give you 10 different answers for who is tight end 2. But there is a guy that I've always liked in this draft class. He's a little lower down, and it's Oscar Delp from Georgia.
I like Delp.
I like Delp. I think the injury, the hairline fracture, again, like, it feels like Georgia players are always entering the draft with hairline fractures. Oscar Delp is one of the better athletes in this draft class at tight end. He was a former top recruited tight end. If you go and look at his stats, you just got to trust me a little bit. Georgia's offense is not real. It's not real. They are feeding screen targets to Zachariah Branch, even though, like, there are moments where Oscar Delp is absolutely flying past linebackers and safeties. He is a very good straight line athlete who can create some separation. The quarterback just never threw him the ball. And then when all the opportunities to throw the ball sometimes for Georgia, Oscar Delp had to pass block because he's that good of a run blocker and that good of a blocker in general. He sort of was the only guy on the team that provided the blocking and receiving, so they had to keep him in when they were getting overwhelmed with pass rush at times. So I think Delp is going to be a guy that goes higher than people think because of the pedigree and the athleticism. And at tight end, athleticism beats production in college. You go. So I know a lot of Bucs fans are going to be mad about going offense this early, especially with Ted Hurst. But Oscar Delp, I think, is going to be a guy that's going to be better in the NFL than he is in college. So I'm going to take Oscar Delp here.
All righty, there we go. Oscar Delp off the board. We move into the 5th round. We'll go a little bit faster here because I want to be cognizant of your time. So any position groups now, JP, that you want me to filter for?
Let's go back to the defensive line. Let's fill out some depth there.
Okay. I'm going to do defensive line and edge. Give you a little bit of both there.
So I think a guy that, of course, with Todd Bowles saying he wanted to get bigger, I think a guy like Xavier Harris makes a lot of sense from Ole Miss. He's huge. I think he's like 6'7", 300-plus pounds. Had flashes. Like, he had moments of great play at Ole Miss. But Ole Miss was also running the tight front and the mint front, which is just wholly nobody else outside of, like, the Cardinals and Nick Rallis run the tight front at the NFL level. It is such a difficult defense to project forward into the NFL because nobody's really running that. I think here Xavier Harris makes sense. I do think he's going to be available later, though. I think if you want for defensive line, I just think if they want size, then you're it's sort of tough because Zane Durant is very similar to Kalijah Kancey size-wise. And I don't think they want another undersized defensive tackle. If you scroll up, at this point, Albert Regis also very similar. Skylar Gill-Howard was sort of the unsung man on that
Texas Tech line.
On the Texas Tech line. I think he, obviously, with the 3 guys around him, he didn't get a lot of attention. So it's really fascinating here because the urge to go defensive line is there, but I don't think the players are requisite to the spot.
Okay. I'm going to add 2 position groups here and see if there's anything you like, though.
Go for it.
Bucs did lose Jamel Dean. They do have Parrish. They do have Benjamin Morrison, but they could use some depth. So I thought, let's take a look at cornerback, see if there's anybody you like. And
wait, hold on. Hezekiah
I also add
still here. That's crazy.
There you go. Yep. And I also added in linebacker because we talked about Anzalone. We don't know if Levante David's coming back. We did draft Josiah Trotter, but if one of those 2 guys goes down, you're back to Servassier Dennis.
Yeah.
So Dennis is probably a better linebacker 4 than he is a linebacker 3. And so I thought, let's go ahead and add the linebacker filter here. Caleb Elarms Orr is so intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think if I ever said it to you, but you want to talk about a linebacker in college who was asked to do NFL things. They put everything on his plate.
Yeah.
He didn't always execute it the best, but they put everything on his plate. And when you talk about a day 3 guy who you say, it's week 14 and a couple of our starters have gone down and we need somebody who actually tested pretty well at the combine, if I remember correctly.
4.47.
Yeah, but we can put him out there, and he cerebrally, he knows what he's doing. Elarms Orr is kind of that guy that I was thinking about there.
And I'm also thinking at corner, the size that they want on the outside. Zion McCollum is a big corner. Benjamin Morrison, big corner. I think Julian Neal and Charles Demings fit the size that they want at corner, if you want to do that. I think the better player of the 3 is Hezekiah Masses, but I think he doesn't fit the size that they want. And then at linebacker, you mentioned Elarms Orr. Another guy I was thinking was Owen Heineke from Oklahoma.
There you go.
He's again, coverage specialist, got the size, the athleticism. One of my friends, AJ Schulte, covers Oklahoma. He has said he was their coverage guy at Oklahoma. And at the Senior Bowl that we went to in Mobile, he was erasing screens. He would blow up screens. Innately.
I worry about Oklahoma. You mentioned Georgia doesn't have a real offense. I think when it comes to linebackers, Oklahoma doesn't exactly have a real defense. Heineke, I love the athleticism. And if you're telling me, hey, we need to get a core special teamer, I mean, the Bucs special teams was atrocious last year, and they just brought in Danny Smith, and hopefully he can rebuild that. Heineke would be a guy I'd be all over for a special teamer. I'm not sure if I think he's going to actually be able to hang at the NFL level as a linebacker, but this is your draft, JP. So you've mentioned a few guys. Who are we taking?
Give me Elarms Orr.
I
think he has the athleticism, like you said, cerebral. They gave him a lot of stuff on his plate to really sort of do at TCU. And I think, again, like you said, if one of those guys goes down, you're going to be okay.
Yep. All right, now we're into the 6th round. Pick 194.
Really he's still there. Go to corner for me. And if he's still there, I'm just okay. All of them gone. So that eliminates what. All right, that's all I needed to see. I was hoping Hezekiah Masses was still there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I took it away from you.
That's okay, because I was thinking okay, if he's still there, I'm gonna just go ahead and grab him. At this point, you can sort of go for special teamers. You go for guys who really are going to fill out the bottom of this roster. Jalen Kennedy is a guy that sort of makes sense size-wise. I think TJ Hall also has the size. I just worry that he's stiff. Okay. He's a very, very stiff corner. Damani Jackson, obviously size, athleticism, pedigree coming from Alabama. So I think here, let's go with Damani Jackson.
Damani Jackson it is.
Again,
6'1", 196 pounds, so he gives that size that Bowles is looking for.
Size, athleticism. I think he can play special teams if you need him to. Now we are in the 7th round. this is just a very, very funny collection of names right here for best player available. You got Eli Heidenreich, who is the running back receiver hybrid. Max Bredesen, who is a fullback. Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels. Taylon Green. Eric Gentry, who probably should be playing basketball, but, like, do what you got to do.
Right. I'm all for Lorenzo Styles, because if you can't get the Styles in the first round, you might as well get the Styles in the 7th.
If you get the faster one,
there you go.
you do get the faster Styles. He will also bring that special teams, the special teams with you. Devin Eastern from Minnesota, another run stopper, just depth on that defensive line. So very, very interesting, again, set of names here. Amari Harvey also is a nickel, very underrated nickel in this class. I think he's going to be a day 3 guy that sort of surprises people. So let's finish this up by going to let's go to the front. I think Devin Eastern is a guy that's, once I said his name, I think he's going to stick with me as on the defensive line, just depth. And I think he is sort of he's a ready-made run defender once again, because you have Howell, because you have a lot of these guys with Canty also, just you want to try and get them rotating in. Jackie Marshall is another guy where really odd build and odd like profile. Baylor, again, not a real defense. He was 300 plus pounds playing on the edge. Not a real defense at all. And I love that we have used that as like our barometer, real or not real. This is
a mock draft is really not a real draft. So
we're this is our theater of the mind right now. Let's go Devin Eastern to round out this draft and just beef up the defensive line.
All right. Todd Bowles said he wanted to get bigger across the roster. So here's our draft, Bucs fans. And I got accused for not putting the grade last week, so I got to make sure I scroll down to the grade this week. All right. Well, somebody said it earlier. PFF was going to give us a C-, and we got a C-, but we definitely addressed some needs. So first round, Bucs went with an edge rusher because they had a clear need for a starting edge opposite Yaya Diaby, and went with probably one of the best pure pass rushers in this draft in Cassius Howell. And they're hoping Ashawn Robinson can just make up for all the run defense that he will not provide you. In the second round at pick 46, one of the most intriguing linebackers in this class, Josiah Trotter, out of Missouri. In the third and the fourth, we took a small detour from improving the defense, and we went with a couple of offensive skill positions. Wide receiver Ted Hurst out of Georgia State, and tight end Oscar Delp out of Georgia, which is, I think, a sneaky need for the Bucs because, as you mentioned, Zach Robinson loves to run a lot of 12 personnel stuff, and he either has a lot of faith in Payne Durham, or that may be a low-key target for the Bucs in this draft. Then in the fifth round, back to defense, Caleb Elarms, or perhaps one of the most cerebrally ready linebackers in this draft, Damani Jackson, the cornerback out of Alabama, in the sixth round. He provides that size to get the roster bigger. And then Devin Eastern, also with the size at defensive line for the seventh round pick at 229. Darius the Great, you know your PFF mock draft simulator. So told you, he got it right. So how do you?
Very funny. It's like, all right. I understand. That was sort of my, like, let me just get my guy. Let me plug my guy here because I think that'd be really fun. I understand. But I do think it's very fascinating for the Bucs because you can say that they filled out the defensive tackle. And like you said, with the offensive line, they sort of, not to say that like they're completely solid along the offensive line, but they were, like, if you're just assuming they stay healthy, like, that offensive line is still very good.
Yep.
But I do wonder, depending on how the draft falls, like, if you don't draft Josiah Trotter at 46, maybe a guy like Chase Pizantis is there at guard, and you want to move Bredesen to be basically your Dan Feeney, because you can get out of Bredesen's contract. I think there are a lot of ways that you can go. So I'm fascinated by where the Bucs can go in this draft.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because at guard, the Bucs are facing an inflection point after this season. So after 2026, Bredesen's guaranteed money is up, so they can move on from him, even though they're not paying him a whole lot. I want to say it's $7 million a year. And then the other thing is Cody Mauch is entering the last year of his rookie deal, and he's coming off of a significant injury that robbed him of almost the entire 2025 season. So the Bucs are going to have to make a decision on Mauch after this year. Do they want to sign up long-term with him? If they do, that's 3 offensive linemen with long-term deals, because they have Wirfs and they have Gedeke as their bookends at tackle, and they're paying both of those guys over $20 million a year. If Mauch bounces back and gets back on the trajectory he was at circa the end of 2024, we just watched, what's his name from LA? Zion Johnson.
Yeah.
At $16 million a year. If Zion Johnson can get $16 million a year, if Cody Mauch gets back to where he was in 2024, you're looking at a $20 million a year guard. So really, I think that's a great point. And I think that like tight end could be some moves that the Bucs make in this draft that other people aren't necessarily thinking about. So I thought it was a great observation.
Yeah, and I think part of why I didn't do interior offensive line is because you're giving it one shot. This is your last shot with this team. And so if this is sort of Todd Bowles pushing everything into this 1 year, go get the impact players who you think can go help you win games right now. A guard on day 2, while it might help later on, are they going to supplant Bredesen at left guard? Is it going to be someone who can play over Cody Mauch at right guard? You have a great problem with offensive line if you draft a guy like Pizantis there, but the question then becomes, like, what are you doing like long term with that group? And for Todd Bowles, I think the biggest question is, does he have that kind of time? Because again, and this is speaking as someone who is sort of an outsider looking in to Tampa, and this is just large scale. Firing everybody on staff and completely replacing your staff is not a great sign. It's not a great sign for, like, this is like the vibes are high right now. This feels like the last chance for Bowles to get a competitive Bucs team. So with that in mind, I was sort of thinking, like, we got to go get guys that'll help us win games right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I really like this draft. It's a little non-traditional. The thing that I really like, JP, is you bring an outside perspective, because when you cover a specific team, and I think you see this because you are a Jags fan, right? Jacksonville Jaguars fan. By the way, all Bucs fans, you can take all your Liam Cohen hate and direct it at this man right here. He's very happy to have Cohen in Jacksonville. But you tend to get into this groupthink, right? Jacob Rodriguez is the pick for almost everybody on every simulator in Bucs world. And it's partly because us at Pewter Report, just like everybody else, fell in love with him at Senior Bowl in Mobile. You went a little bit of a different direction. You went with Josiah Trotter, whereas most people would just take that Rodriguez pick. So I love that this is a different draft than what I've seen, what I've done myself. And I like the thought process that you brought into it. So it was fantastic. JP, any of those picks, do you have a cool non-NFL comp for off the top of your head?
Josiah Trotter as the Tasmanian Devil.
I love it. That's awesome.
I love that player. He is, again, chaos. Just a giant ball of chaos when you watch him play. There's a rep. There's a rep where against Auburn where he jumps over the running back.
That's the one I was hoping you'd bring up.
It's the wackiest play I think I've seen on anybody on tape this year, but it works. Like Josiah Trotter's up sometimes out there. Good friend of both of ours, John Ledger, said he's like the Cam Thomas of this draft class. He's just out there hooping.
Yep.
There might not be a rhyme or reason to it. He plays like his dad was a former linebacker. he's so chaotic in a good way, but also in a bad way. But I think if there's anybody who's going to get the most out of him, it's probably Todd Bowles.
Yeah.
And hypothetically, like in a perfect world, Levante David comes back, and there's nobody better for him to learn from than Levante David. So I think Josiah Trotter is a guy I do think the Bucs fans are gonna fall in love with.
All right. I appreciate it, JP. I want to give you an opportunity to let all of our viewers know where can they find your work. What are you up to these days? What's going on at CBS Sports?
So, like you said, you can find me at CBS Sports primarily on the podcast Pushing the Pile. We have shows Monday and Wednesday, wrapping up free agency. We have a mock draft that we're doing on Monday that you can be around for, you can hang out for. You can find me on CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Network, talking about anything and everything NFL. You can find my writing at cbssports.com. I have an Arvell Reese story coming out on Ohio State's Pro Day on March 25th. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. But other than that, follow along, see what I'm doing, see where I'm going.
All right. I appreciate you, JP. So for JP Acosta of CBS Sports, I am Josh Queipo. This has been another live mock draft Pewter Report podcast. Out.